how does one distinguish between a normal selfish person or a person who gets selfish in a particular situation versus a certified narcissist?
The public notion is probably narcissists target people who are weak, but that's not true.
Point that they are not going to stop with you. They may just pick another victim of their.
There was a very interesting experiment on water. Have you seen that? So this was done by a Japanese scientist, and you have to cut a pathway the first time you need to go across this forest. So tomorrow I might come and say, Nimisha, you know what? That pathway is not really safe. And most clients come back to me and they tell me, Ramya, I feel so different about myself.
कि मैं ही बोल दूँ lights, camera, action. Okay, starting. Up. Please, who is it? Okay, we'll just start.
Rolling, camera, action.
Do you feel that no matter what you do, you're not going to be enough for someone? Like you're constantly apologizing for things you did not do, doubting your own memory of events, second guessing your every move, walking on eggshells around this person? You're often made to feel guilty, invisible, irrelevant. Could be at your work, in your relationships, or even with your own family member. If you are silently enduring this, know that it is not your fault. Know that you're not alone in this. Today's conversation is about narcissistic abuse, which is so real that you would be surprised. Millions of people are feeling the way you are feeling and silently enduring all of it. Joining me today in the Quiet Reset podcast is Ramya Shripati, who's a narcissistic recovery coach who has dedicated her life into helping people find the patterns of narcissistic abuse and after that find clarity, strength and healing. It is possible that you are not somebody going through this, but you know somebody who is experiencing something like this. Do share this episode with them. You don't know whose life can change because of this. With the hope that this episode could be a turning point, could be a transformational journey for somebody who really needs help. Let's get into it. Hi Ramya.
Hi, Nimisha.
Thank you for joining me for the Quiet Reset podcast. So we're going to talk about a very important aspect today, and I firstly would want you to introduce yourself, and then we will jump into the topic.
Sure. Thank you so much again for inviting me on this show and allowing me to speak about narcissistic abuse. So I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery support life coach and also a shadow work healer. I'm based in Bangalore. And prior to becoming a life coach, I was in the HR domain for many years. And in 2017, I had a surgery, thyroid surgery. So after my thyroid surgery, I realized that there is a close correlation between our mind, our thoughts, our body, and our emotions. And I realized that if you tend to suppress your emotions, if you don't tend to speak up, your thyroid gland gets affected because that's the throat chakra. So I was very intrigued by this and I was like, okay, so if I could have saved my thyroid, if I had known this, then I can probably create awareness so that other people don't go through such health issues. So that kind of motivated me to become a life coach. And I did my certification and specialized in narcissistic abuse recovery because I feel somewhat in everybody's life, there is a bit of narcissistic abuse. The word seems very fancy, but actually it is just psychological abuse and emotional manipulation, which all of us go through in different levels or forms, but probably are just not aware of it. And through coaching, I help people to kind of understand what is abuse, what is narcissistic abuse, and also help them to understand what they can do to set boundaries so that they can start their healing journey.
Okay. So definitely you're doing a great service to everybody who's going through this particular situation in their life. For our audience, if you could just break down what is narcissistic abuse, and we'll go in depth of understanding this first.
Sure. Yeah. So a narcissist is a person, when I first say narcissist, people think, okay, somebody who's self-obsessed, who looks at the mirror and always just thinking about themselves. So I would say that's a narcissistic trait. But a narcissistic person is a person with a personality disorder and they have a certain characteristics or traits which they consistently show over a period of time. So one being entitlement. They feel the whole world should revolve around them, their needs and their tantrums, right? And they are very shameless in, kind of manipulating or even getting other people to do what they want. They exploit others to get their own needs met. And they don't have empathy and they are completely Like, if you come and tell me that I faced an issue today, I got hurt today, I would be like, that's nothing. You know what? I went through something which is so much more harder, difficult. So always, taking the focus back to their own self
Okay.
and kind of just diminishing you or making you feel like you're not good enough, constantly comparing you with somebody else or making you feel like, somebody else is much better than you. So all those things create a sense of like, okay, I'm not good enough. I need to work harder to win their approval. So instead of actually working towards your own life goals, you forget to listen to your inner voice. You become so brainwashed that you become like a robot for that person. They're pressing the buttons and you are just, serving them or meeting their needs. So that is a person, a narcissistic person in a nutshell.
Okay. So, is this a psychological condition? Being a narcissist, is that a psychological condition? Does the narcissist know that he or she is actually manipulating somebody, or it's just, uh, are they born or are they made?
So, yeah, very good question. So, I get asked this quite a lot by my clients too. So, the thing is, a narcissist is not like born a narcissist.
Okay.
So, there are certain genetic dispositions and, genetic traits which are passed on, which cannot be helped. But most of it is actually in the childhood and the environment that they get in childhood. So, if they see a parent figure who is a narcissist themselves, who is manipulating others, who's talking bad behind, others' backs, so they learn that this is normal. And they also learn that, oh, to gaslight somebody is also normal. To, just tell somebody a lie is normal. And to exploit others is normal. So they grow up thinking that nothing is wrong with me. I am entitled to behave this way, right? So it's a mix of both, I would say.
Okay. But if we look around us, we all know people who are selfish at times, or everybody wants control in their lives. They want to make sure that everything happens according to them, each one of us,
Right.
right? So, although you did mention the traits,
Hmm.
but then what is that one defining trait, or how does one distinguish between a normal selfish person or a person who gets selfish in a particular situation versus a certified narcissist?
Okay. So I think one thing to look out for is they take pleasure in your pain.
Okay.
So a mean or selfish person may do one or two things here and there to, kind of get
Fulfill their
yeah,
needs.
yeah. But a narcissist is somebody who will consistently keep doing that. And when you are crying or when you are in pain, you might see that they have a smirk on their face. Like,
Okay.
I won, I
Okay.
managed to make you cry. I managed to hurt you. So, there's a word for it. I think Schadenfreude or something. I don't know how to exactly pronounce that, but that word is, taking pleasure out of someone else's pain.
Okay.
The opposite of Schadenfreude is mudita, which is when you feel joy for somebody else's
Okay.
joy. You are celebrating with them. You're happy for them. But a narcissist is not somebody who will ever be happy for you because they want to be the center of attention, right? So if the attention is going to the other person, they may not like it. So
Okay.
they will try to kind of pull the carpet from under you.
Okay. So now let's talk from somebody who's going through a narcissistic abuse. Um, at what point do people come to you? So we'll talk more from your own experience. So at what point do people come to you, or how do you even recognize that this person is actually going through an abuse, or it is just a bad phase in their lives?
Okay.
Let's talk about that.
So when I started off as a life coach, the first few clients who came to me in the first 1 year, they didn't come for narcissistic abuse because at that time I was not specializing in narcissistic abuse. But most of them would come to me saying, Ramya, I have a pattern of overthinking. I have a pattern of insomnia. I'm not able to sleep. I'm always feeling like I'm not good enough. So then when we would go deeper in the sessions, we would realize that there is a person who is psychologically manipulating them and making them install or, have these beliefs that, okay, I'm not good enough. Right. So, and that leads to all this overthinking and all the other issues and anxiety. And I'm not saying every person who overthinks and anxiety has a narcissist in their life, but somewhere actually, if you see, there would be those consistent patterns. And then they'll be like, oh my God, yeah, a parent or an in law or a partner, somebody who's constantly in their inner circle gets into their like belief system and installs their belief system into this person and they struggle with it. So they come to me mostly to say that, help me, I don't know what am I doing wrong. There are very few who come with the awareness that, okay, this person is a narcissist. But fast forward few years, now the clients who come to me, most of them are aware They tell me I've seen videos about narcissistic abuse. I'm aware that what I'm going through could be narcissistic abuse, but they don't come to me asking for, my validation of whether it's narcissistic abuse or not. Very few of them ask that question, but most of the people are asking, how can I heal? How can I move forward? So I know that this person is not going to change. This pattern has been going on for months, years, or sometimes even decades. But what can I do now? I don't want this to be the rest of my, story and rest of my life. So that's what usually happens in the.
Okay, give me few instances from maybe your clientele. Um, so what I want to do is break it down for our audience, okay?
Yeah.
For them to understand exactly if what they're going through is narcissistic abuse or it is maybe some other kind of healing that they require. So while we will not talk about the other kinds of healing today, not much of them, but give me instances of,
Okay.
real life examples of what has happened
Sure.
to people.
Yeah. So, okay, I would say the first one could be a narcissistic parent or a
Okay.
narcissistic in-law. So there was a client of mine who came to me and he said that soon after he got married, he, realized that he had to protect his wife from his mother, who, he thought was a narcissist. So he kind of gave some reason and he took her away from the house because they were like, typical joint family system and everything. So it was difficult for him to kind of put it out to his parents saying that, I need to.
Okay, let's take a step back. So, we'll come to the solution part in a bit. What I want to understand is, see, now you took an example of, the person who took his wife away because of the situation. In India, especially, all traditional households, they have a certain expectation when
Yeah.
the sons get married.
Yeah.
But not all of them are abusers.
Yeah.
Right? They may
Yeah.
have certain expectation because of the conditioning of the
Correct.
society. So in this particular example, how did that person recognize, or was it even true that the in-laws were, or how can both of the in-laws be narcissistic, right? So then, what are those traits? What are those traits? If
To
you could give,
identify.
very specific examples of,
Okay.
okay, this was happening,
Okay.
and therefore it looked like a narcissistic abuse and not just a regular orthodox household.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, as you rightly said, control is something that not many people would like to give up on.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, if you see, most women, especially in the traditional setup, may have been controlled because of patriarchy or other systems. So their voice was subdued in their life. And when they grow older, they want to again project that same control to somebody whom they think or assume has lesser control than them, right? So that power dynamic is something which is very commonly seen. Like most of my clients who come to me have either a narcissistic mother or a narcissistic mother-in-law. Okay, so that is the most commonly faced issue, I would say, that people have today because of that power dynamic. And also the fact that the older generation doesn't understand boundaries so much. So if you kind of tell them that, hey, you are invading into my boundary, I don't want you to control my life, I want you to take a step back, they take it as an offense.
Right.
They're like, how dare you show disrespect? I never question my elders. I just follow them, my in-laws or my parents. So you are supposed to do the same. So it starts with that. So though it seems not very toxic, but if there's a repetitive pattern of this person always putting you down, controlling, demolishing your self-esteem and deciding what you need to do in your life and in your marriage, then I would say that parent or in-law is toxic. So coming to a toxic partner, so the second most common thing so that my clients face, so they would come to me saying that, my partner isolates me, my partner doesn't let me go hang out with my family or friends, and or my partner is always putting me down, insulting my parenting, my job, what I'm earning, or the cooking or anything of that sort, right? So that kind of continuously gives this person the message that I'm not good enough. So this again is something which is toxic and something you have to take a little more seriously, because you can set a boundary. And so that is one main thing. When you set a boundary, a healthy person will not resist it.
Okay.
They would be like, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that I was crossing a boundary for you. Let me be careful. If I do it again, tell me. But a narcissist will say, how dare you? How dare you set that boundary with me? you're supposed to just accept my control.
Mm.
How dare you let go and try to be your own person, right? And then they would start smear campaigns against you.
Okay.
So they would go to your common friends and even their common friends, relatives, and say, half twisted stories or lies about you to make you look like a bad person. So maybe you stop talking to them because you're so fed up with, trying to set a boundary and they're not respecting that boundary. But they would go to the relatives or friends and play the victim. So that is another thing that they
Mm.
do because they cannot be held accountable. So when you try to hold them accountable, the immediate switch is, I'm a victim. I've been attacked. This person is being so mean to me. This person is not talking to me anymore. But they will not say, okay, I did this to, really create this situation. So, all the other people will start misunderstanding the victim and they may start isolating the victim. So most of the victims or the survivors who come to me, they come and ask, like, how do I sit and prove that I am the one who is being abused? And I tell them, you don't need to prove it to anybody. The truth will always come out. You cannot keep it hidden. So they may wear a mask for the world, they may fool people around, and if other people are choosing to believe their stories over coming to you and saying that I'm hearing this, is it true? What is really going on?
Mm.
They don't really care for you. And probably they're enjoying listening to the dramas. Right? So you don't need such people in your inner circle.
Mm.
You can be cordial with them, but they become the flying monkeys of the narcissist. So that's the term we use for people who kind of buy into the story of the narcissist and kind of isolate, and the secondary abuse happens for the victims because of that. So that is something. So those were the few traits. So one is the manipulation, one is the triangulation.
Mm.
Triangulation is between 2, 3 close relatives or close relationships. They come to you and say, you know what, that person said this about you.
Oh,
And,
okay.
they go to the other person and say, you know what, this person said this about you. So then, there's like a
Oh.
silent war which starts.
They're creating this environment where others also sort of start hating you
Yeah.
and isolating you.
Yeah. And then they create this
It looks
misunderstanding.
like a mean girls club that I want to take a little deeper into this. So one, you said isolation, triangulation, and triangulation probably is the way in which they try to isolate you.
Yeah.
One you said is smear campaigns against
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
playing the victim card,
Yeah.
like I'm the victim. Also putting you down
Yeah.
at every instance possible,
Yeah.
right? So these are some of the very common traits.
Hmm.
Definitely there are a lot of people that we know in our, let's say in our offices, in our homes for sure. Could be a friend, could be a relative, could be a partner,
Hmm.
a parent or a parent-in-law who is probably habituated.
Yeah.
So again, do narcissists pick their victims, or like is there a power dynamic at play here? Because they are not going around and doing this with everybody, right? So how does, what
Yeah.
have you seen in your experience around that?
Yeah. So I would say, the public notion is probably narcissists target people who are weak, but
Mm.
that's not true.
Oh,
Narcissists go for people who are, very high in empathy, who have this, this inner light, right? So they kind of like a moth to a flame, they get attracted. And the fun is in bringing down this person, breaking down this person. What's the fun in breaking down a person who's already weak, right? There's nothing to really be proud about. But if you manage to attract a person who's like really doing well in life and really like soaring and doing all the right things and very, very empathetic, so they notice all that. So if you just bump into somebody, by mistake, you may say, oh, I'm so sorry.
yeah.
So they see all these cues and they're like, okay, this person is like really empathetic and sensitive. And this person has a lot of this inner light. So let me target them and let me break them down.
Okay. Now the way now you're putting it out is that it's like they're really picking their victims, right? So again, is it the conditioning or is it something from their inside?
It's
For
their insecurities. Okay, they're highly insecure. So they do all these dramas and the psychological warfare because they don't have a strong sense of self. So they get their sense of self or meaning of life by hurting their victim.
Hmm.
And if that victim kind of chooses to move away, they'll find a new victim.
Oh, okay.
It's something which is not going to change. It's not like they are going to have that self awareness and say that, oh my God, I'm going to lose all these people if I don't correct myself.
Hmm.
They just think that let me, become more smart with my, manipulations, and they come back even more aggressive and even more smarter, I would say. Or they think they are smarter, but once you kind of learn about the red flags, you cannot unsee it. it is very, very obvious after that.
Okay. I'm still a bit more inclined towards learning about narcissistic people because I feel that that's the key. Right? If you have really identified that somebody is doing this to you very like intentionally, is when you know that you have to walk away. There is no other way, because I think you brought about a very important point that they are not going to stop with you. They may just pick another victim of theirs. So which means that it is no longer, just the conditioning part, right? It's
Yeah.
not that, okay, I saw abuse at my home, or I have some childhood trauma, or my partner was controlling, and that is why I'm just taking it out on a sibling or a partner or whatever, because that is still, of course, that is an abuse, and we know that most Indian families are
Yeah.
broken in that aspect, where one person is taking out their own insecurity
Yeah.
on another person.
Yeah.
But and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that what we are discussing right now is much deeper than that. Or
Hmm.
maybe when the insecurity takes a monstrous form is when a narcissistic person targets somebody else. So
Yeah.
is that so?
Yeah, it is because it's a pattern and it's something that it's very innate. It is in nature.
Mm.
So it's like if you know this frog and the scorpion story. So the frog gives a right to the scorpion and makes the scorpion promise saying that you're not going to sting me, and scorpion just needs the right. So the scorpion convinces the frog saying that no, 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 I'm not going to sting you. And at the end of the ride, the scorpion stings the frog, and he says, "That's my nature. That's who I am." So that's what narcissists are.
Unapologetic.
Very, very unapologetic about their behavior and only with their select victim. They won't do this in front of everybody else.
Yes.
So that is something very important to note, because if a person is behaving the same with everybody, if they have anger issues with everybody, including their boss or in front of a crowd, that's not a narcissist, because narcissist is somebody who knows to switch the behavior. If you've heard of this term, Dr. Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
So they know in front of whom to behave in what way. So in front of an audience, they'll be very charming, gracious, very nice hosts, and just like very, very helpful people. So nobody would even believe when the victim goes and says that actually this person has a dark side. Actually, this person is very controlling, very mean, very vindictive, very petty, very insidious. People look at you like, what is wrong with you? This is such a nice person, such a helpful person. And in society, they take up roles where they're seen as very, very helpful, nice people, right? So when they're able to do this switch of actually being mean to one person and being totally different, to the rest of the society, that is a red flag. That is something that shows you that this person is not going to change and this person is possibly a narcissist.
Hmm. Okay. So let's talk about little bit of the healing experiences, right? So now let's say if I have, been abused and I come to Ramya, what does your healing process, entail?
Yeah.
Because one is the identification. Let's say you've identified that, okay, this person is going through a narcissistic abuse. Uh, what do you do after that? How many sessions does it take? So I want to again break down this part, because to just make it more accessible for people,
Hmm.
that okay, there is a process to it. It is not going to be random. I don't need to have shame associated with it.
Yeah.
So I just want to address those
Sure,
factors.
sure. So, most of the people who come to me, first of all, say that, can you give me like an end number of sessions that are needed? Because we need to find, have a budget for it, right?
Yeah.
So, what I normally tell my clients is, maybe between 3 to 4 sessions is like the bare minimum that is required to build the foundation, because we need to kind of uninstall the voice of the narcissist and reinstall their own belief system. And after that, I call it maintenance sessions, where as and when they're really struggling, they can come back to me for more sessions.
Hmm.
But those initial 3 to 4 sessions, I would recommend it should be done within 3 to 4 months,
Okay.
even if you're doing one session a month.
Okay.
And I stay in touch with all my clients even in between sessions over WhatsApp text. I send them some memes or some jokes or some other, journal prompts or things which will resonate with their specific condition. And even if they're having a hard day, I tell them don't wait for the next session, just vent it out there.
Okay.
Just send it to me. When I see it, I will respond. So that kind of gives them that closeness with me. And the fact that they don't need to wait for the next session if they're really having a breakdown, during in between sessions. And the other thing is, like I said, nobody wants to do endless sessions. So
Yeah.
what I do is I try to condense all my knowledge about narcissistic abuse and the healing process into these initial 3 to 4 sessions, so that like 70% of the groundwork is done. So I've tried to put in everything, because I do understand that nobody wants to spend like endless amount of money on mental health, right? Though it is important, but at the same time we need to try to give some value add.
Yeah.
So I try to do that. I try to condense it in 3 to 4 sessions, but I would not be able to say that, okay, in 3 to 4 sessions, you're going to be a healed person, because healing is a lifelong journey. So it's about rediscovering yourself, rediscovering your inner voice, your authentic self, which the narcissist probably is completely erased, right? The second part of the healing is to remove the trapped emotions and trauma from your body. Because you can keep talking, then you'll still feel like, okay, I'm still having anxiety. I'm still having palpitations. Why am I not healing? It's because you're still probably in touch or in a environment where you continuously see such people. So that is not letting your body to feel safe, because your nervous system needs to feel safe if you need to heal. So if you're not giving your body a chance to feel safe, it's very, very hard to heal. Right? It's like you're giving yourself alcohol and then you're saying, I'm trying to, de-addict myself. That's not going to work. You have to stay away from alcohol if you have to heal. So you have to stay away from narcissists and toxic people and all the enablers who kind of come and tell you, ye family hai, forgive them, let them back in. So your body is like, oh, no, 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 no. I don't want to be around them. I want to feel safe. So listening to that intuition, listening to that inner voice, giving yourself those boundaries. So that is also another thing that we work on to help people to rediscover their voice and also set those boundaries which are necessary and important. And though, I highly recommend going no contact, I do understand in Indian family system, sometimes it's not possible. So you have to somehow tolerate or continue to interact, but you can always limit your interactions with them, right? So you don't have to put yourself into the lion's mouth every time. Yeah,
Away from their path as much as possible.
yeah, because that's going to otherwise derail your healing process. So the somatic healing techniques is something which I teach
Okay.
through my coaching sessions.
Okay.
So those are things which will help you to release like trapped emotions. Even in shadow work, I learned something interesting, that the different organs in our body store different emotions.
Yeah.
For example, liver stores anger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if anger is continuously stored in your liver and you're not expressing it or releasing it from your body, you'll start having issues in your liver. So the healing,
Talk about this a little more. Tell me about the different part of the body.
I could see light bulbing.
I mean, this could be very interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because one of my discoveries in the last couple of years has been that everything that we attribute to disease, as you're saying, right, it may not have stemmed from the physical body, but something else. Like you just it sort of validated that
Yeah.
that liver. It could be because of the anger that your liver is getting damaged and the anger towards something like this.
Yeah.
Right. So tell me about the different body parts.
Sure.
But I want to talk more about all the other aspects. So
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
back trace from here.
Sure. So this concept is called organ sound healing,
Okay.
where each organ stores a different emotion and there's a different sound to heal it, right? So, for example, if you are storing a lot of anger in your liver, so the sound for it is shh. So, the more you keep saying that on a daily basis, consciously thinking, I'm releasing this anger from my liver, it helps. So, it's a somatic thing. So, it's not like, I can write it and give like a prescription and say, take this medicine. But if you do it on a daily basis, you will see some improvement. And also the other thing which I, tell my clients, if they have a lot of internalized anger, find ways and outlets for it. You can go punch a pillow, right? So I attended one workshop where they told us to bring pillows to the workshop and we were like, okay, are they going to make us sleep? So then they were like, no, close your eyes and try to think of what makes you really angry and just go punch that pillow. And that was very cathartic because, when I did that exercise, I don't identify as a angry person. But when I did that exercise, I was like, oh my God, I'm actually holding so much anger within me. So I was able to release it, right? So that is one of the things. So anger is one of the emotions. So the other emotion which is commonly felt is grief. And grief is stored in our heart and our lungs, right? So to heal this, for the heart, the sound is ha. So just saying ha. So it's almost like a sigh, right? So it's like forcing your nervous system to feel that safety and to kind of tell that, okay, I know that I'm holding this emotion here. I'm going to release it. So actually, sometimes when you're anxious or nervous, you'll feel like a tightness in your chest. So it's actually your heart which is like working overdrive, right? Because it's storing that, pain and that grief. And even your lungs. So people with the breathing issues, asthma. So I tell them, first you go back and first heal the root cause. You can take medication. Doctors are there to help you. Of course, there are inhalers and other, medication which will help you. So I'm not saying do only this. So sometimes you'll need to work parallelly with, the other medications. But when you work with this as well, the somatic healing part, so it's a holistic approach. So it's not just healing your thoughts and your mind, it's healing your body as well. And there's a very interesting book written by Louise Hay. So she's written this book called You Can Heal Your Life. So she's a cancer survivor who healed herself with just changing her thoughts. So she realized she was holding a lot of resentment in her body, which was causing cancer in her body. So cancer is caused by, suppressed resentment in the body. So she says that, by changing her thoughts, she didn't go for any chemotherapy or treatments. That was a risky thing to do. She still had so much faith that changing her thought process is going to help her to heal. So she realized that she had to forgive those people who did wrong things to her. And this forgiveness bit is something most of my clients struggle with.
Yeah.
So because they're so angry, they're like, why should I forgive this person? Because the minute you forgive that person, they expect that, you'll take them back
Also,
into
as you mentioned, the victims are generally very empathetic.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
they're forgiving,
Yeah.
in a way, they are again opening themselves up because an empathetic
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
cannot stay closed for a very long time. Like
Yeah.
I am an empathetic person.
Yeah.
I realize this. I'm not just attaching this tag, but I know that I am
Yeah.
right. So I know if I forgive somebody, I forgive them, and then I would want to go back. And it's like forgive and forget happens in parallel for
Yeah.
me. So, in order to stay away from somebody, with whom I had any level of attachment at any point, I really have to sort of constantly give myself that input that okay, I cannot get empathetic towards them. I cannot allow myself to be in their shoes because otherwise I know that I'll go back to them. It's
Yeah.
easier for me to do that
Yeah.
via versus somebody who's not that empathetic, right? For them, okay, I don't like this person, I'll
Yeah.
stay away.
Yeah.
Those things come more naturally, but I think for an empathetic person, it comes with more
More
difficulty.
difficult. Yeah. So I would say this is where boundaries play a role. So I tell my clients, you can probably not force yourself to forgive, but even telling your mind, I'm willing to forgive, makes a huge difference because it kind of opens that portal. So instead of holding on to that anger and that grudge or that, that bitter feeling towards that person, you're saying, I'm willing to forgive them. Maybe not yet, but I'm willing to forgive them. And also, the other thing is, I'm going to continue my boundary with them. Just because I forgive them doesn't mean I'm going to put a red carpet and say, come back, walk all over me, right? You're not going to give them that access. You're still going to hold your ground. You're going to hold up your guard and you're going to forgive them. It's done, and that forgiveness is not for them, but it is for you. So there's this lady, Dr. Ramani. So she's like a leading global expert in narcissistic abuse. I've learned a lot from watching her YouTube videos. So she tells that you should never force a person to forgive someone, especially somebody who's been narcissistically abused, because the other person may not understand the trauma, but this person will take their time and that's their journey of healing. So when they're forced to forgive, it re-traumatizes them. So if you just let them be, let them have their space, let them heal, they themselves will probably say, oh yeah, this person is irrelevant. So that is the end goal of healing, to reach to a place where you're able to look at your abuser straight in the eye and just give a message to them, I'm totally indifferent to you. You are irrelevant to me. Whatever you do, your dramas, your nakras, your all the manipulations is not going to affect me. I'm going to be this chill pill person. You continue doing whatever you're doing. I'm like up here, and it's not going to hurt me. Right? So when you reach that place is when you know that you've healed. If you're able to be around them, not get triggered, not get traumatized, and you are totally indifferent to them, that is a very good goal to have when you're in your healing journey.
So before this, you were speaking about the healing process in itself. You mentioned that one of the things that you do early on is make them realize
Hmm.
that, okay, it is not their fault.
Yeah.
And I think that would take like a significant shift in the mindset, wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
How do you achieve this goal? Like, is
So
it through like you telling it to them, or what happens in that process?
yeah. So in the typical coaching process, so it is more like a conversation, like how you and me are talking.
Okay.
So then I would ask you questions to kind of get you to open up about your traumas or about specific instances where, I will start looking for patterns of you showing signs of saying that, okay, my self esteem has been beaten down. So then, again, I'll bring it up to your awareness saying that, is it really your thought or someone else's thought?
Hmm.
You thought you did a bad job, but, I feel it is actually a good job. So why do you feel it's a bad job? So you'll be like, no, no, actually, I was raised in a house where I was constantly criticized, right? So that's become my inner voice. So we all have something called an inner critic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that inner critic, when it's so loud, it becomes very hard to heal. So the whole process of coaching helps you to bring to awareness that, oh, I have something called an inner critic, which is not my voice. It is my caretaker's voice. It is my parents' voice. It is my in-laws' voice. It is my partner's voice, but not my voice. So the whole thing, the shift happens when you realize that I have the choice to mute that inner critic, to not, take it to heart or get affected by it, and instead focus on what is my own authentic voice, right? So
Break that down. What
yeah,
does it
sure. So if you come to me and tell me, Ramya, I'm a very anxious person, I'm a very depressed person, I'll stop you there and say, you are not an anxious person. At times, you feel anxiety, or at times, you think that you are depressed, right? So can you see the difference between saying, I'm anxious person, I'm a depressed person? You become, that becomes your identity.
Right.
And when that is your identity, it's very hard to change
Break
it.
away from that.
So I say this even for smokers, right? So if somebody comes to me saying, I'm a smoker, I cannot quit. So I'm like, if you are saying I'm a smoker, that's your identity. How are you going to change your identity?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, say, I have a habit of smoking a lot and I want to change that. So then it shows that, okay, I'm different. This habit is different. So there is a
They're not-
possibility to
So
change.
it is connected, but it is not entirely me.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
you're saying, right?
Yeah. So you cannot dissociate from
Hmm.
what the issue is, and you realize that I'm a different person. This issue is a different thing. So there is a possibility to change this. But if you say, I am this, people are doing this to me, I am a victim, then you cannot change, you cannot grow, right? So staying in a victim mindset also prevents your healing. So that is something which we break down in the coaching sessions and make the, client realize that I'm not a victim of my life. I'm the hero of my life. I can sit in the driver's seat of my life. No more am I going to give control to other people to decide what is going on in my life. Right? So that whole shift beautifully happens in a span of few coaching sessions. And most clients come back to me and they tell me, Ramya, I feel so different about myself. And when I see those messages, it really makes my day because
Sure. I'm sure.
yeah.
It's very difficult to find strength in your own self.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can relate with two concepts here. So one is so my last podcast that we shot, it was about neuro linguistic programming. So a lot of times the language that we use defines, as you said, right?
Yeah.
So it's altering the language to alter your behavior. So we spoke at length about that in the
Okay.
last podcast.
Okay.
So I think that's exactly one of the
Yeah.
techniques that you're applying with
Yeah.
your with your clients as well, right? The other thing is a very very separate context to this, but I take strength finder sessions for people for their career coaching, right? And one of the most commonly seen pattern that I've noticed is that everybody begins with the fact that, as you said, I am not good at this, or I don't have this experience, or again, like feeling insecure or feeling small about themselves. And career coaching may look like preparing for an interview,
Yeah.
and I've been doing it for the last 7 years. What I do is help them find their strengths
Okay.
in the profession, right?
okay.
And once they have seen that, and just change the work that they have done and make them see it in the light that they start respecting themselves more, and they
Yeah.
start feeling that confidence, it does 70% of the job.
Yeah.
After that,
absolutely.
everything else becomes easier. So
Yeah.
I figured this out like through practice, because
Okay.
I didn't do any formal coaching in
Okay.
training people for further interviews and all. And I figured that everybody has this pattern.
Okay.
And when I sit with myself, even I have this pattern that, okay, I feel it starts with feeling more insecure, and then you have to really And we said
Wow.
change that narrative. Okay, this is just one isolated experience, right? I can connect these dots.
Yeah, it's amazing that you're able to do that. I I think, this, if you're able to kind of reinstall someone's self-confidence, you're doing an amazing job. So yeah, that's really nice to know. But one thing I would say is most of the people, if you actually look at, there are three core things that everybody wants, and most of the people struggle there. So one is they feel I'm not good enough. One is they feel I'm not lovable, and one is they feel I'm not worthy. So when these three core wounds happen in a person, that's when all the people pleasing will start, the codependency will start, or this lack of self confidence will start. So all these things are interconnected, right? Or there might be a person in their life who's constantly beating them down. So once you start reinstalling, uninstalling this programming and reinstalling a belief, so that's where affirmations play a huge role.
Okay.
So affirmations are positive statements which we say to kind of reinstall the positive beliefs about ourselves. So the main rule for affirmations is it should be said in the present tense.
Yeah.
It can't be like I am going to be successful. The brain does not believe it. It should be I am successful, right? It's about how we dress up, how we show up,
Yeah.
right? So we don't need to kind of be like, super top, like winners of, every competition and everything to really feel like winners. We can also show up as the best version of ourselves in our everyday life, right? So it doesn't have to be just with the dressing. It can be even with the way, the words we use. And there was a very interesting experiment on water. Have you seen that? So this was done by a Japanese scientist. I'm not able to recall his name, but he tested water, the molecular structure of water. He exposed it to heavy metal music and in places where people were shouting, fighting, and the molecular structure of the water was very distorted. Then he took another bowl of water, he kept it around pleasing sounds, prayers, chants. And when he studied the molecular structure of water, it was like beautiful designs like snowflakes. So why I brought this up?
Once you're saying this, I've seen that video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So why I brought this up is because our body is mostly water, right? So it absorbs all the, energies and the words which are said not just by us, but the people in our environment. So in fact, in my own house, I have a rule where children, none of us should use bad words.
Okay.
And whenever we're watching TV, if children hear somebody on TV using a bad word, they're like -10, -10. So this is again about parenting and the
So
programming.
immediately training their mind
Yeah.
recognize that this is not conducive,
Yeah.
and that recognition itself can help.
Yeah, because they realize that, it not only affects the other person, makes the other person feel bad, but it also impacts their own body. It's creating that negativity in their own body. So I'm not saying that, okay, my parenting is like so amazing and my children are perfect. There are like, ups and downs. There are, times when, out of anger, probably they may use a bad word. But again, I kind of consciously make them aware that this is not acceptable. You can be angry. You have a right to be angry, but you don't have the right to be disrespectful. You have to stay respectful. You have to use the right words, right? So otherwise, what's the point of evolution and everything else? We might as well just be like animals. And I think animals are much better than human beings in that way. Yeah,
Sure.
they are very, very
Sensitive and sensible.
yeah,
both.
yeah,
Right.
unconditional love and all those things. Yeah, animals show that, but yeah, so we need to be a more evolved species. We better behave like that. Right?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So you brought about another important aspect, which is parenting. A lot of times, especially if it is an abusive household, uh, you know, especially I've seen this with women, that they do not speak up or they do not retaliate, they do not even try to find their own identity. It's perhaps because they're thinking about their children and they're thinking about what will happen to them if I break off from this family.
Yeah.
Lot of that kind of burden is there, and most women in India are still not financially independent. We know this for a fact, right? Like the uh, urban workforce, women in urban workforce is like with a miserable situation right now. So yeah, so not being financially independent is, I think, keeping away a lot of women from speaking up or even recognizing that, I need to break away from this. So how do you, what do you tell your clients that if, especially if children are involved, how does the dynamic play out there?
Okay. Yeah, this is a very important question again. And, a few of my clients had written to me before, the podcast saying, please address this in your podcast. So, I'm glad you brought this up. So, as you rightly said, there are a lot of toxic dynamics in marriages, and children unfortunately see that. And in some way, it gets normalized in their head that marriages are like this. And you would see, the next gen already telling, like, they may be even like 7 years old or 6 years old, and they're like, I'm not going to get married.
Absolutely.
I don't want this nonsense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, which is a sad thing. So, because probably we are not setting the right example for them. And as you rightly said about the financial independence, that plays a huge role. So, interestingly, I remembered one of the workshops on emotional intimacy I had attended with some Australian coach in the start of my career. And what she shared in the workshop was the fact that her husband had, when they got married, she was not working. So then she had children. So she was like, financially dependent on her husband. He had put in like a big chunk of money in a separate account in her name, given her access to it,
Yeah.
and told her, this is your running away money. If you ever think this marriage is toxic, you have access to that money. I'm not going to question you. That's yours to take, and you can leave.
My God. Hey, I've never heard something like this, and it is so powerful and beautiful.
Amazing.
I mean, the fact that your partner is doing that for you is like speaking of the foundation that the person is trying to build the marriage on, right?
on trust.
On trust.
Not on coercion, not on control.
God, okay. Right? This so like I would like you to just address the camera and tell everybody, who's getting married now that be like this for your partner. This is so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I would say, the partnership should be based on mutual trust and respect. If that mutual trust and respect is not there, it is control, it is coercion, and that is very wrong. So, if anybody is in a toxic marriage and can resonate with this message, please know that you can get yourself out of it. Just because you are financially dependent now doesn't mean that's going to be the rest of your life. So, when you realize that you're in a toxic marriage, you need to start taking steps to become financially independent, because without becoming financially independent, it is very rare that you're going to be able to get out. There are a few clients of mine who managed to get out because they had their parents' full support, and they managed to just leave. Or probably their children are too small, so they're able to leave. But once the children are little older, the children also get emotionally attached to both the parents. So it becomes a totally different dynamic and ball game. And it's not easy for you to kind of just uproot them and their lifestyle and take them somewhere else. So there are a lot of clients of mine who continue in dysfunctional marriages because they know that there is no escape. But I tell them, this is not the end. You can continue to have these conversations with your partner saying that if you don't change these few things, if you're not going to be respectful with me, these are my boundaries and this is what I'm going to do. And once the children are older, there are a lot of people who say that, once children are older, they just choose to walk out.
Yeah.
And by that time, they build their finances, they build their career, they get back to jobs. Because as children grow older, probably they don't need us around as much, right? So it is important that you take charge of your life, because if you're going to stay in that passive moment or saying that I'm a victim, I'm financially dependent, nothing is going to change. Even 5 years, 10 years later, you're still going to be financially dependent. But if you take charge from today, saying that in 5 years or 10 years, I'm going to be in a place where I have that running away money, even if my partner is not giving that to me, I have the running away money, you will feel liberated. You won't feel stuck. So I would say in those situations, try to start taking those small steps towards your liberation and your freedom, because that is important. Because without that, nothing is going to change. And the second thing is about co-parenting in a situation like this. It is very difficult. There is a lot of manipulations that the children will see, a lot of disrespect the children will see. So talk to the children, not in a way to blame their other parent, but to say that what you saw was not something which was okay. When you grow up with your partners, don't do this, right? This is not the right thing to do, right? And the other thing which I've read in a book on, there's a book called Parallel Parenting. But the author he has a very funny name, Carl Knickerbocker. Okay. Yeah, so, but the book is amazing. So, anybody who has to deal with a narcissistic co parent should probably read this book. It's called Parallel Parenting. So, he talks about how you need to survive or cope in marriages or situations where you're probably not able to get out of it. But you need to learn to reverse manipulate the manipulator.
Okay.
Right? So, that kind of puts you in a place of control. You're not a victim now. You know that person is manipulating you, but you're not giving them a reaction. You know that, okay, you need their help, you need them to pick up the child, and you're not able to go, you're stuck in a meeting. If you request the other co-parent, they're not going to do it. unless there's something in it for them. But if you tell them something like the example he gave in that book is, oh, if you go to the football practice to pick up our son and he sees you, there, he'll feel very proud that, my dad has come. So, that dad actually bought it and he went to pick up the son because he was like, oh, the other children are going to look at me as a super dad. And he went and played ball with them and stuff like that. So you kind of learn to reverse manipulate and massage their ego because their ego is super huge, right? The other partner who is narcissistic. And when I say partner, it is not necessarily always the husband. Sometimes the wives are also equally toxic. So there are some clients of mine, male clients of mine, who tell me that the Indian legal system is so pro women and supports women, and they are struggling because they feel literally looted in terms of alimony. And there's a client of mine who said he's not allowed to meet their daughter if he does not pay her a certain amount of money every month. So they've not gone through the divorce process, but he still gets manipulated even though they're separated. Right? So there are women also who are equally toxic.
Right.
So it is very important for, people to understand these dynamics so that when they are, raising children, they're protecting them from to a certain extent. They cannot completely protect them. I would say again, it's all about life's journey and karmas and everything. Each soul has its own journey, right? So we can't completely shield anybody else, but we can to some extent talk to them, say this is what is right, this is not what is okay, so that they have some blueprint of
At least they
healthy,
have a healthy, normal life.
healthy coping mechanisms, healthy emotional regulation. So if they see one parent who is able to stay calm, despite how stressful situations are, they learn that. If both the parents are continuously like arguing, shouting, fighting, so their whole nervous system gets screwed up.
Got it.
So they will end up having like issues, health issues, very bad health issues when they grow up because that home environment was always unsafe. And there are parents who will turn the children so badly against the other parent that, the children will stop having a relationship with the other parent because they've been manipulated by this one parent.
Yeah.
Right? It's very sad when such things happen because children should be allowed to make their own decisions about, whether they want to be in touch with that parent or not. But sometimes they are forced or, kind of that whole manipulation is done very subtly. So children don't realize that. And they probably grow up thinking, oh, this other parent was really bad. This parent who pretends to be a victim is a real good parent.
Yeah.
But, some clients of mine come to me saying that, all my life I thought my dad was a narcissist and my mom was a victim. But now, as I'm growing up, I've realized that it was my mom who was the problem. She was the one who was emotionally and psychologically manipulating and abusing my father. But, I was made to believe my father was wrong. So then they kind of rebuild and reestablish the relationship with the father, after years of probably having a bad relationship.
Yeah.
So such dynamics happen. It's sad. But I'm hoping with awareness, people start awakening and start realizing that this is not something they should take casually or lightly. And they should take a little more interest to know what is narcissistic abuse so that they can protect themselves, protect the children because they are the future generation, right? So it is an important job. Parenting is an important job. So I hope more people take active interest in healing themselves because when they heal themselves, that trickles down to the children too. If they are unhealed, that also trickles down. So that generational poison keeps going down, right? So at some point, somebody has to take that step saying that enough is enough, right? This ends with me. I'm not going to allow my children to feel my pain, which has been passed down to me, right? So that is something which is very, very important.
Okay. So, Ramya, we have been speaking about a lot of things. One of the things which I'm very curious about is when people come to you with, their problems, have you seen any common, phrases that the narcissistic people use on them that you really have to undo? Like, are there these common phrases?
Yeah, there are. So most commonly used is I never said that, or you are being too oversensitive, or you are overreacting, or you're not good enough. Yeah, so these are the few commonly used phrases that most of my clients come to me, saying that, do you think I'm overreacting? So they'll again,
Try
reshare.
to validate.
Yeah, so they'll ask me for the validation. And I'm
Like, give you the situations. They tell
yeah,
"Hey,
yeah.
this is what
This
happened.
is what happened is the background, and this is when they told me I'm overreacting. So am I really overreacting? I'll be like, oh my god, yeah. Even if I was in your place, I would be very upset.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I, this is something which is making you upset.
Hmm.
And the other person is trying to gaslight your reality by trying to tell you that you are overreacting. They're trying to shame your reaction instead of stopping and holding themselves accountable to change something which is hurtful. They are making you feel ashamed about your emotions and your reactions to their abuse. So these are the few common phrases which is used to gaslight and manipulate.
Okay. Another thing which I'm very curious to know is have you seen patterns of physical abuse laced with narcissistic abuse, or narcissistic are more just manipulator and they, that is where they derive more joy. So have you
Mostly,
seen?
yeah. So mostly it is people who are narcissists are, psychological and emotional manipulators.
Hmm.
But sometimes they become even physically abusive. But most of my clients who come to me, I would say 70% it's only purely emotional,
Hmm.
psychological abuse, and that's what makes it worse because they think physical abuse is bad.
Hmm.
Physical abuse, you can go to the police and say this is evidence, and I got beaten up or whatever. But for emotionally being beaten up, what is the proof? What is the evidence, right? So people think it's not so bad. Maybe I should just adjust.
Hmm.
Maybe if I'm kinder to them, they're going to be nicer to me,
Yeah.
right? So they try to find ways to keep themselves safe and they start walking on eggshells
Yeah.
to avoid the next conflict, right? So they're always just thinking ahead what that person wants so that, there's no conflict in the house and there's peace and safety in the house, and which is really sad, right? So I would say it's a mix of both, but it's predominantly psychological, emotional manipulation,
Hmm.
which is narcissistic abuse.
Okay. Another thing which during the conversation I was thinking that is like most Indian households, and especially of our previous generation, like our parents
Mm.
and maybe their parents, and to an extent even our generation women, uh, is it that is it very common to find a narcissist person in your surrounding, or
It
is
is.
it?
It is. It is.
Hmm.
So most people have these narcissistic traits. And again, what I would say is look for the patterns. If they've been mean once in a way or said something without thinking to hurt you, once in a way it doesn't make them a narcissist.
Hmm.
But if you see a clear pattern of them triangulating, manipulating, trying to create drama in your life, trying to become the center of attention in every, get together, then this person is a narcissist, and you would find such characters in every family, I would say.
Wow, it's that common.
It is very common.
Hmm.
So it's just that we've normalized it. We'll be like, this person is like that only.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
person loves to control. It's okay. Right?
I think
So,
often, as you're saying, a lot of narcissistic people get away with it very easily because it's like, matlab, the people around them are just getting used to it and they're like, okay,
they're normalizing
they're
it.
normalizing it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So that's how they get away. And that's why I tell my clients, you don't become a part of that problem.
Hmm.
When you are realizing, you set a boundary, you speak up, right? So even if the other enablers around you are telling something different, and if they are siding with a narcissist or enabling or saying that what they're doing is okay, just let it go and all those things. So you don't lose your voice because nobody else is standing with you.
Hmm.
So I tell my clients, I will stand with you.
Hmm.
I am with you, So you don't have to go back and try to blend in with that toxic environment just to keep the peace.
Hmm.
You continue to fight for the truth, right? So that becomes very important. That boundary becomes important.
A lot of time it is being said, and especially in case of women, that, marriages are no longer working out and Indian divorce rates are also getting higher. And every time a person tries to raise awareness about these kind of things, especially a woman trying to raise awareness, they're labeled as feminists, white feminists, and they're like, okay, they are just trying to break down households because, in a very, like, I speak Hindi, so it's a very common thing, commonly used sentence कि किसके घर में ऐसा नहीं होता है, why the hell is she or he making a big deal about
Yeah.
out of this. It's a very normal thing to happen, where there are like multiple utensils, like बर्तन होंगे तो खड़केंगे आपस में, and these kind of languages used around you from your own parents. Like your parents would say this if you have an abusive partner or an abusive in-law.
Adjust kar lo.
Adjust kar lo. Like I think adjust kar lo is the most commonly
Yeah.
used phrase, right? So how do you? I can understand that you are telling your clients that adjust mat karo. I'm here to support you.
Hmm.
उनको आप बिलीव कैसे कराते हो? हाउ डू यू मेक देम बिलीव दैट ओके आई विल बी ओके आफ्टर दिस? बिकॉज आई एम स्टिल फाइंडिंग इट वेरी डिफिकल्ट. Like I can't even imagine putting myself in the shoes of your the clients, the victims, that how do they even gain back that confidence that okay, I am going to be okay after the whole thing is over.
Okay.
I think that's the most difficult part, right?
Okay.
Okay, I am going through this battle right now.
Yeah.
I'll fight the battle. But what after that?
Yeah. So one of the things I asked them in the beginning is, after 5 years, okay, do you want your life to be the same
Hmm.
or do you want it to be different? And then I asked them to visualize what is the kind of life that they visualize after 5 years. And they'll realize that what they want is something totally different from what is happening currently. So then we start working backwards, saying, so to get that life 5 years later, what is one step you can start taking now, today? So if you look at goals, people will think it's a long term thing and it's a huge thing, lot of effort. But if you break it down to what is one small change I can make today to start moving towards that reality in future, that makes it easier for the person to start believing that it is possible for me to move to that
Yeah.
future reality. It gives them that sense of hope and also makes them believe that okay, it's not a big thing, it's not a big deal. It's something as small as I tell them, start creating rituals where you start feeling safe,
Hmm.
right? So if you feel you're constantly anxious, then start listening to some chants or start telling affirmations that I am safe, I am enough. So all those small little things also help you
Hmm.
in a few months or a few years to reach to that place where you are a calmer person, not an anxious person, and you start feeling like, okay, I have begun to heal. So giving them that hope is very, very important. And breaking it down to small, simple steps is again an important part of coaching journey, because
Got it.
if you just give them a lofty goal saying that in 5 years I'm going to be this, and they feel like I cannot achieve this,
Uh-huh.
they won't do anything to change it. So as a coaching partner, accountability partner, I tell them I'm going to partner in this journey with you. I'm going to walk this journey with you. So you're not alone.
Hmm.
So for these people to hear that, okay, I'm not alone. There's someone who believes in me, someone who is constantly, giving them that,
Fully.
rooting for them and supporting them and encouraging them.
Hmm.
So that makes a huge difference in their journey.
Wow.
So that helps them to heal.
I think we undermine, especially in the corporate culture, we both come from a corporate background, right?
Yeah.
We undermine the importance of having people to back you, right? Like,
Yeah.
and sometimes a stranger's validation can matter so much more than your own folks,
Yeah.
because if a stranger is able to see value in you, it there must be something in you that is that is allowing them to see that value or see that light in you.
Yeah.
And in corporates, we often tend to pull each other down. Why I'm
Yeah.
bringing up corporate is because, again, imagine somebody who's going to work with such a household with having an abusive partner, and they have to cope with the corporate world. And then that, okay, you're not able to perform in your office and you're again being pulled down. It becomes such a vicious cycle, right? And not just corporate work, like if the person is also meeting relatives
Hmm.
and they're not able to show the best selves because their mind space is like
Not in a good,
not in a good state, right? Uh, from every walk of life, they will suffer and they will be pulled down,
Yeah.
right? How do people deal with this?
So, I mean, again, I think it's a lot to do with the conditioning
Hmm.
in society that uh, in one of my reels, I spoke about this, the fact that when we are physically unwell,
Hmm.
we don't hesitate to tell somebody, I
Yeah.
have a fever or I broke my hand.
Yeah, I need
I
a
need
chutti
to,
today.
chutti, I need to rest, right? But if you're mentally not feeling okay, people hesitate to go and tell, especially at work.
Yeah.
They're not going to say that, oh, today I have a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Today I had like a panic attack, right? So not many people are openly talking about
Because
it.
it's not seen very nicely.
Yeah.
If
You're
somebody
seen as a
comes
weak
with
person.
big person,
Yeah.
you're not able to cope, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it is I mean, a lot of times
There's a lot of
judgment is there. And I remember talking about this, that people say bring your 100% to office. It's just a sham. If you really started bringing your 100% to office, and the way you're feeling, if you start actually projecting that, you will not be accepted, and that is the reality. Like, I mean, it's sad,
Yeah.
but that is the reality, that
That's
you
true.
can't bring your 100% authentic self to your offices. It is not possible
Yeah.
unless the office space has changed. The environment has become safer. You know that if you bring your 100%, you're still going to be okay. And people
Yeah.
will understand that,
Yeah.
one day you are at your 200%, the other day you could be at your 50, and
Yeah.
it is okay. I mean,
It's about a balance.
yeah, I know I'm digressing a bit, but why I'm addressing this is because, again, a lot of folks, urban folks have to deal with work pressures and
Yeah.
everything. And we just spoke about
Mhm.
women being more financially independent to be able to deal with
Correct.
this. So how do they create this balance? So one of the things that you mentioned is that firstly, it starts with the belief or the affirmations. They have to start probably chanting, or they have
Yeah.
to they have
Create
to
that
create
safety.
that safety. So that could be step
Yeah.
one. What
Yeah.
could be step two?
So the other thing would be also being real about what is the challenge. So they don't need to necessarily tell their whole story to everybody
Yeah.
in office, because obviously there will be filters and judgments and everything. So, but at least if they identify 2 or 3 safe people that they can share
Hmm.
in their workplace too,
Hmm.
saying that, once in a way these things happen, and when it happens, I'm not going to be able to, come to office. And if they have like an understanding saying that, okay, if I'm not there, but I'll make sure the work is done,
Yeah.
or I'll make sure that this is delegated. So it's about taking responsibility, right?
Mm.
So because you don't want to be seen as a slacker.
Correct.
You don't want to be seen as a person who's like, oh, every second day my child is unwell, or
Right.
something happened and I need to take it off. So then you're seen as an unreliable person at work, and
Right.
it's very hard to grow. So the other thing is to get the partner also to help you in parenting, right? So if only one partner is doing the lion's share of parenting and going to work, it's going to be very hard. So I suggest to my women clients, especially when they're going back to work, saying that if your partner is not supportive, then you need to find either a parent or an in-law or a daycare or some other like nanny support system to help you, because you don't try to do it all alone. Because if you try to do it all alone, you're going to get
You're
burnt
again
out.
dealing with even more
Yeah,
stress.
yeah, it's too much more
Again.
stress, and you,
Mm.
you get burnt out.
Yeah.
And your children need you to be strong, right? So you need to take care of yourself. So I teach them a lot about self-care too,
Okay.
because that also is important.
Okay.
Because if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not prioritizing yourself, then you're not being a good example to the future generation as well. And also you are breaking down. And even in the flights, they tell, right? You put on your mask first and then assist the person next to you. So you need to take care of yourself. So that becomes very important.
Interesting. Earlier we were talking about reverse manipulation, right? So you gave a brilliant example. Uh, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I feel that a lot of people can instantly apply that, and maybe,
Yeah.
even just by listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
One is the chanting part. Maybe we can do one thing. Maybe in the description we can attach some of these chants or affirmations, which generally help people. I know every case is different,
Yeah.
but there might be some like sounds that you were mentioning. Okay, these kind of sounds. So we'll attach some link.
Sure.
So we'll do
Share
that.
video.
The other is, as you're saying, reverse manipulation. Let's talk about that. I think it can help people.
Yeah, sure. So again, when I say reverse manipulation, it's not about changing the core personality of who we are.
Yeah.
Because when I first tell that to my clients, they're like, are you telling me to become a narcissist? I'm like, no, no, no. I'm not asking you to take pleasure in, manipulating the other person, but you're doing this as self-defense. And there's a difference in that.
To get things done moving for you,
To get
right?
things done, to defend yourself also, right? Because you are in a place where the other person is, they're probably toxic. They're not going to change. And you need to do what it takes to get things moving, right? So in those cases, it's all right. It's to look at it as a game of chess, right? So if you learn the rules of chess, you realize that it's not purely just going step by step forward. There's so much strategy. You're also thinking, what is that opponent going to do? What are the possible moves they're going to take to kind of take you down? So with a narcissist, your life is a game of chess. If you don't learn to kind of understand what's going on in their mind and how they're going to try to put you down, you're going to be very naive, and you're going to keep suffering and struggling in silence or in shame, or trying to figure out, why are they doing this to me? Why are they doing this to me? What did I do? And you'll be trying to work harder and harder and harder to win their approval. So once you start having this awareness, you stop doing that. You stop doing that and you start thinking that, okay, what can I do? If this person is going to say this to me, they're most likely going to say this to me. So let me say the opposite. So instead of saying that, okay, this is what I want for my birthday, you're going to say, you know what, I don't want this for my birthday. And invariably, you'll see the narcissist will give you the opposite of what
So
you ask
you
for.
are teaching them to identify patterns
yeah,
and apply that.
Yeah, identify
Interesting.
patterns and also to kind of strategize and think what is
Yeah.
that person going to do next. So if you see a pattern of them doing opposite of what you tell them, then you tell the opposite of what you want, right? So if you tell them again and again, I want peace in this house, you'll see they'll make sure they create chaos.
I think this is the most empowering thing to do for yourself,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
it's not even manipulation, it's just empowerment of your own self.
Yeah. So it's like you're building up yourself from within, right? And you are seeing the game from a higher ground. You're not looking at yourself as a victim who's been walked over. Instead, you're looking at yourself as a person who's saving yourself and your family. And you're looking at the bigger picture. Okay, what am I doing by staying in this? What am I doing by asking them this? So everything needs to be thought through. You cannot be naive around them anymore. Because once they've shown you repeatedly through their behavior and their words and their actions that they're not going to change, they're going to continue to be who they are, now it's on you to take charge of your life. Like, even in Mahabharata, imagine if Krishna told Arjuna, let, the Kauravas do whatever to your, wife Draupadi, let them take all your land, all your empire.
Yeah.
Don't fight, be a good person, be calm, keep forgiving. That would not be right? So it is in our scriptures too, right? I'm sure even other religions will have, the same message. So peace and everything, harmony, everything is important. But when you are faced with toxicity, you have to pick up the war path. Because if you don't pick up the war path, you are not doing the right, the dharma, right? The dharma is to stand by what is right. The dharma is to fight for yourself when someone is being toxic. The dharma of your soul's journey is to probably get in touch with your own inner light and your own inner power. It's not that only few people have that power, it is all of us. All of us have that power within us. So I think through the coaching process, what I try to do is ignite that fire within that person, saying that I'm a warrior too.
Yeah.
I can fight for myself. I don't need somebody to protect me. Right? So that brings about a lot of change because that mindset helps them to move forward. So, because if I keep them dependent on me for coaching sessions always, I'm not doing a good job. I'm not a good coach then.
Totally.
But if they are feeling empowered and saying that, yes, I got that fire in me, I am going to fight this, I am going to win this battle, then, my job is done. So,
Lovely. So, do you usually bring in spirituality? Have you seen spirituality play an important
Yeah.
role? Because, of course, especially here in India, people, if they believe, they do believe very strongly in God.
Yeah.
So, how does that play out?
It plays a huge role because one of the words I use is radical acceptance. So when you realize that this person in your life is a narcissist, they're not going to change. If you're going to keep fighting the reality and keep hoping that they're going to change, you are just derailing your healing process and delaying your own healing journey, right? But when you come to the radical acceptance that this person is going to continue to be who they are, it's nothing to do with who I am, and it's not like I deserved it. It is probably some karmas of some other lifetime. Maybe in some other lifetime, I've hurt them and they've come back to take it back from me by creating this pain in me. So without awareness, I suffered. Okay. So, but when I realized that, okay, this is just a karmic exchange. So you will reach a stage where you will say, okay, enough. I'm done bleeding for this person. I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop giving them reactions. I'm going to keep myself away from them. I'm going to focus on my healing journey. So, this is the spiritual aspect of it to kind of look at it from a zoomed out higher perspective and say that, okay, whatever happened, happened. I accept it. That was a part of my soul's journey and my karmas. But right now, I know I deserve better. And I know I have the power in me to choose better for myself. So, instead of being the victim, I'm going to sit in the driver's seat and I'm going to start taking charge of my life. So that shift also helps. And also the fact that, even some of my clients tell me that they don't pray or they don't believe in God. And I tell them, at least for this period, try to listen to some chants. That, rewires your brain. So this is a very interesting story, if I may share. So this is an example I give to my clients to explain about the neuroplasticity of the brain. So the brain is a network of nerves, and each of these nerves carry messages.
Yeah.
I am not good enough. I can't do this. Somebody else is having power over me. I am powerless. So these are all messages or pathways. Just imagine you're going through a dense forest, right? and you have to cut a pathway the first time you need to go across this forest. So tomorrow I might come and say, Nimisha, you know what? That pathway is not really safe. It has a lot of poisonous snakes. So from tomorrow, go this way. You may resist it, saying, I've put in so much effort. What are you saying? Not get. Yeah. So, so, I cannot do this. So I might say, no, Nimisha, I'll walk with you. I'll also come. I'll help you come. You don't go that pathway. So we both will start creating this new pathway and we start going in the new pathway. What happens to that old pathway which is not being used anymore in the forest?
I don't know. You tell me.
Just think about it. It's a forest, right? Nobody is going. So what happens to that pathway?
Greens will
It will start growing back.
Yeah.
So it is lost. That
Yeah.
pathway is lost.
Correct.
So this example again ties up with the brain because the messages which are keeping like in a loop, which is taking you in a old way of thinking, or the narcissist has forced you to think in a certain way. So you need to stop going down that pathway. You need to reinstall it with a new pathway, and this old pathway will beautifully just disappear from your brain. Will stop that self-talk which is there, which is installed by the narcissist, will be replaced with your own healthy, empowering self-talk.
Interesting.
Right? So yeah, so that kind of helps to understand the power of our brain, the power of our words that we use, and the whole control and the power that each of us have. It's not about any special person, but it's about each of us having that power to heal.
Got it. So I think so I have two last questions. One is so a lot of people listening to this might be not going through it, but looking for a relationship, right? And especially I'm talking about finding a spouse because of course you can't change your parents and
Yeah.
at times you don't have control over how your in-laws are going to be. But let's say a partner, how they are, could be a very important decision
Yeah.
in one's life.
Yeah.
So, what are the green flags that one should be looking out? And I'm not talking about the, acha ladka, achhi ladki, not that. But what are some of the, uh, like, which can prevent them from being abused?
Okay.
Those kind
So,
of green
yeah.
flags.
Yeah. So this again is a very useful question, especially those who are dating and
Yeah.
trying to find the right partner. So one thing I would say is, whatever is unresolved for you in your childhood, in terms of a parent who probably didn't show up for you the way you wanted,
Yeah.
you will attract the similar traits in a partner
Yeah.
because it's your soul's way of finding closure. Because what didn't happen with that parent, you want it with the partner, right? So, and you're hoping that you'll have a different ending with the same traits in that person, but you're having a different ending, a happier ending. But unfortunately, sometimes that happy ending doesn't happen and you end up being more traumatized.
I've heard this that most boys end up finding a woman who's like their mother, and most women end up finding a man who's like
Like
their
the father, yeah. Yeah.
also in so I've been listening to a lot of manifestation podcasts these days, and one of the same thing which has come up again and again is that you tend to attract the
Yeah.
exact kind of person that you do not want. Like if
Yeah.
you have seen your father being of a certain kind and you don't want partner like that, unavailability, and you end up attracting a similar or similar traits
So
for a different ending. Yeah, without doing the groundwork to actually attract something different.
yeah. So this is something, I want people to be conscious of.
So
Recognizing that you may subconsciously attract somebody to heal your unresolved wounds. So I would say before you get into relationship, find out what your wounds are and start working on it, start addressing it, start becoming more healed before you jump into relationships. So you avoid all these,
Got it.
unnecessary pain. The second thing is to look for, consistency and reliability. That is a green flag in a person because if they're consistent in their behavior, if they're not making you walk on eggshells and you are able to rely on them, you tell them something, they get it done. You don't have to keep telling them 100 times, right? So when you see those, that's a green flag. When they're emotionally available to you, when you're talking to them or sharing something, they're not scrolling through their phone, right? They're keeping the phone down, saying that, okay, you seem upset. Is everything okay? Can I help you in some way? And also another thing is some of my clients tell me, I don't want my partner to fix things for me. I just want them to hear me out. So I tell them, then tell them that, say, I'm not looking for solution. Don't try to fix this. Just hear me out. Do you have 5 minutes? Do you have 10 minutes? Right? So giving that partner that time frame also mentally prepares
Also
them.
the opportunity
Yeah.
to give you the kind of response that you would really like,
Yeah,
because how would
yeah.
they know other?
Yeah. So, and sometimes you're not looking for that solution, right?
Yeah.
So, sometimes while you're sharing with them, the solution comes to you.
Yeah.
But you just want your partner to hold that space for you so that you feel safe to share something which is vulnerable. So, another green flag is you're able to share your vulnerability with the other person and they don't throw it back on your face later.
Uh-huh.
Right? If they listen
Like the
to you.
most important
Yeah.
part is to identify a narcissistic person.
Yeah, so because a narcissist will, listen attentively
Touch on.
and they will throw it back on you, saying that, oh, you are good for nothing. You told me that day you couldn't do this and you quit that job because of that thing, that incident. So you are not, you're like good for nothing. And you'll be like, I shared something vulnerable. I didn't expect you to throw it back on me.
Got it.
Right? So if you're able to share it with a partner who is holding space and not going in and telling other people or making jokes about it to humiliate you or throwing it back on your face, so that is a green flag, a person whom you feel safe with, right? And a person who is emotionally available for you, who empathizes with you, who understands what you're sharing, or if they don't understand, they're at least asking you the right questions, saying, I didn't understand what was the big deal, you look upset, but I feel if I was in that place, I would have done this, right? So they're just giving a very honest, transparent answer,
Yeah.
saying that, mujhe fark nahi padega, so why are you so upset? So, but at least they are actively listening and trying to empathize and understand your situation, right? So that also is a green flag. So, yeah,
So I think a very important point that you mentioned is consistency in
Yeah.
any of these kind
Yeah.
of behaviors, right? Because everybody in the initial courtship period tries to be nice, and as you said that they're trying to attract a person who is more empathetic and with more inner light. So they might actually try to appease you by doing things which you will find appealing.
It's called mirroring.
Is it
That's what narcissists do?
Oh,
So they observe you, they'll see what are your values, what are your interests, and they will mirror it. So suppose you're somebody who's interested in spirituality, they'll be like, oh, even I've gone for these classes, and I read this about God, and I like this song about God, and you'll be like, wow, I met a soulmate.
yeah.
Right? Or if you like history, they will also, tell something about history. They'll be like, let's go to museums, so even I love it. And you'll be like, I'm the luckiest person alive. This person is like my soulmate. So, if you find somebody like that, I would say don't take it at face value. Take your time to assess and see whether they're consistent, right? Because a person cannot pretend for too long. Give them at least 6 months to a year. And I, suggest to most of my clients who are dating, saying, be friends first. See how things are in your friendship. See how they're treating other people who are lesser than them. Like, for example, a waiter in a restaurant. Are they treating them with scorn and contempt and kind of, like treating them badly, shouting at them, or are they treating them also with respect?
Yeah.
So these are things that you can look out for to see who is a safe person, right?
I think the biggest takeaway for me from this entire conversation is that, everybody has, everybody holds a value, everybody is worthy. And if somebody is trying to bring them down consistently, and, it is one's own responsibility to figure that pattern. And if you're in that situation, then, walking away from it or at least seeking help.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, like a lot of young girls and boys, they are not able to find partners these days. They're not able to open up emotionally. And then it's like, I was not looking for this, but just identifying what you were looking for is also important in
Yeah.
the first place,
Yeah.
right? And rather than having like a fancy relationship, I think it's more important to have a relationship built on these foundations.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the words of one of my clients, she said beautifully, she expressed her pain and she said she was staying in a beautiful glass palace and she thought that, that was good enough. But then she realized how fragile the glass palace was
Yeah.
and it kind of just shattered one day, right? And she had to step out of it. So, yeah, I think, the foundation of any relationship should be trust and respect. And when that is missing, I don't think so. Any amount of luxuries or any amount of superficial things will matter, right? Because if this person comes to you, gives you flowers after beating you down emotionally, it's just a damage control thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not
Probably
it's
to
not pure love.
bring you up again and beat you down.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And their love is always transactional.
Yeah.
It's always like, I gave you this, what are you gonna give me back? It's never like I love you for who you are and I'm gonna just, give you everything. It's always an investment, it's always a transaction, it's always like, okay, what is in it for me? So that is a narcissist. So you have to be careful with such people.
One of the beautiful things that you mentioned was I think you just casually used it, but it ends with us,
Yeah.
and that's a book, and now
Yeah,
movies also.
yeah.
And that's, even though that's more about domestic abuse, and
Yeah.
but then I think it's the same thing. That was more physical, but
Mm.
I think I would just say that, everybody who's listening to this podcast should think that it ends with me, and I
Yeah,
will not take it anymore, and
absolutely.
seek help, because uh, one may doubt that, okay, whether I have a narcissistic partner or a family member, it's okay to have that doubt. Just seek help and see how does it matter. If you're not in that situation,
Yeah.
so lucky, right? So just being aware that you're not in the situation itself could be a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll
Right?
be grateful
You'll be
for what
grateful
you
at
have.
what you
Yeah.
have, and
Yeah.
you will be able to deal with it. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the main objective
Yeah.
for this conversation in itself. And any last message you have for our viewers, anything you have in your mind that you would like to share about?
Yeah. So I would say if you're going through something like this, please don't think you are alone. You can seek help. And it is easier when you have someone who understands and validates your experience. So don't struggle alone. Reach out for help. There's so much of resources about narcissistic abuse, which is freely available online. So educate yourself, be aware. And if somebody is going through it in your circle, be more mindful of it instead of telling them, why don't you just leave? So this is another thing which many clients of mine tell them, the people around them just say, just leave the marriage. But sometimes it is
Not
layered, it is more complex, and it takes time. And if they are in a trauma bond, it takes a lot of time to come out of it. So if you're somebody who is going through it, or if somebody in your circle is going through it, don't be judgmental, be supportive. Ask them, how can I support you? How can I help you? So that will help a lot more than your judgments of why can't you just leave, or you're just a weak person, right? So, and if you are the person who's struggling, please seek help, and help is always available. And thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ramya. I think very important conversation, that and very important work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I think a lot of people are finding themselves through you. So incredible.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining me for this podcast. You have been very, very kind and generous.
Thank you. It's my honor. Yeah.